Are you creating your reality? Or is your mind creating you? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the world you've been experiencing your entire life may not be the world you think it is. The people are still there. The streets are still there. The sky is still above you. Nothing appears to have changed. And yet, something is different. You begin noticing things you never noticed before. Certain opportunities suddenly seem to appear everywhere. Certain people begin to feel strangely familiar, and situations you once believed were impossible suddenly seem possible. Did the world change? Or did you change the way you see it? There's an old idea found in many spiritual traditions. Reality begins inside the mind. But in recent decades, this idea has taken a much stranger form. According to messages attributed to a supposed extraterrestrial civilization known as the Arcturians, humanity is living inside a reality that is constantly being shaped by consciousness. They claim that your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, and most importantly, your subconscious beliefs are continuously teaching you what reality is supposed to look like. But there's a problem. If your subconscious mind is influencing the reality you experience, then who is actually choosing your reality? You? Your past? Your subconscious? Or something you are not even aware of? Tonight, we enter the strange world of the 5D Arcturian Council. And along the way, we are going to ask a much more disturbing question. What if the greatest force shaping your life is the part of your mind you rarely notice? The message from the Arcturians. The Arcturians are described in modern spiritual and New Age traditions as an advanced extraterrestrial civilization associated with the star Arcturus. According to these beliefs, they exist at a higher level of consciousness, sometimes described as the fifth dimension. They are said to possess knowledge far beyond our own about consciousness, energy, healing, and the nature of reality itself. But there is no scientific evidence confirming that an extraterrestrial civilization exists around Arcturus and is communicating with humanity. And this is where our story becomes interesting, because whether the Arcturians are literal beings, spiritual entities, or simply a symbolic way of talking about higher consciousness, their message contains an idea that is surprisingly familiar. They say, your outer reality begins with your inner reality. And that brings us to something much closer to home. Something inside every human being. Something you carry with you everywhere. Your subconscious mind. The invisible architect. You wake up. You check your phone. You remember yesterday. You think about tomorrow. You speak to someone. You make a decision. You react to something unexpected. And all of this feels like you. But how much of it is actually a conscious decision? Your brain is constantly processing information. Memories, emotions, patterns, associations, expectations. And most of this happens without your conscious attention. You don't consciously decide how to interpret every facial expression. You don't consciously calculate every familiar movement. You don't consciously remember every experience that shaped your beliefs. Yet, they can still influence you. This is why the subconscious has often been compared to the soil of a garden. Every repeated thought is a seed. Every repeated emotional pattern is another. And eventually, the seeds begin to grow. A thought becomes an expectation. An expectation influences behavior. Behavior becomes a habit. And habits begin to create a life. The strange part? After enough repetition, you may no longer remember that you planted the seed. You simply believe, this is who I am. The world your mind expects. Imagine two people walking through the same city, the same buildings, the same streets, the same weather, the same number of people. But one of them has spent years believing that the world is full of opportunity. The other has spent years expecting rejection. They don't experience the same city. One notices possibilities. The other notices threats. One remembers the person who smiled. The other remembers the person who ignored them. The physical environment may be identical, but the experience is different. Why? Because the brain doesn't simply record the world. It interprets it. It filters it. It decides what deserves attention. And your previous experiences influence those decisions. This creates something that can almost feel supernatural. You begin expecting something, and then you start seeing evidence of it everywhere. You believe nobody likes you, and suddenly every unanswered message becomes proof. You believe opportunities exist, and suddenly you begin noticing possibilities that were always there. Did reality change? Maybe not. Perhaps your filter changed. And if your filter changed, the world you experience changed with it. The strange power of imagination. Now we reach one of the most mysterious parts of the Arcturian message. They speak about imagination as if it were more than fantasy. They describe it as a bridge between consciousness and reality. At first, this sounds impossible. How could imagining something change anything? But humans have been using mental rehearsal for a very long time. Athletes visualize movements before performing them. Musicians mentally rehearse difficult passages. Performers imagine themselves standing on stage. People preparing for difficult situations often mentally practice what they're going to say. The body can respond to imagined situations in measurable ways. Your heart can beat faster. Your muscles can activate. Your emotional state can change. Your brain can rehearse patterns. But there is an important distinction. Visualization does not prove that the universe is magically rearranging itself around your thoughts. Instead, it may change you, and when you change, your decisions change, your behavior changes, your attention changes, and eventually, your circumstances can change. Maybe manifestation isn't about commanding the universe. Maybe it is about preparing yourself to recognize a reality you were previously unable to see. Thoughts are not enough. There is something the manifestation industry often leaves out: action. You can visualize becoming confident, but eventually you have to speak. You can visualize becoming disciplined, but eventually you have to do something you don't want to do. You can imagine becoming a better person, but eventually someone will test that identity, and you will have to choose. This is where something changes, because every action becomes a message to your brain. You tell yourself, I am confident, but when you act with courage, your brain receives evidence. I am disciplined. Then you keep a promise you made to yourself. I am a loving person. Then you choose kindness when anger would be easier. Slowly, the identity becomes less of an idea and more of an experience. The subconscious learns through repetition, but perhaps even more importantly, it learns through experience. Who are you becoming? There is a strange question hidden inside all of this. Most people ask, what I want: more money, better relationships, better health, more confidence, more freedom. But perhaps a deeper question is, who would I have to become to live that life? Because your desired future requires a certain version of you. A person who wants peace must eventually learn how to stop feeding chaos. A person who wants healthy relationships must learn how to communicate differently. A person who wants confidence must eventually become comfortable with uncertainty. A person who wants freedom may have to develop discipline. And this is where the spiritual message becomes surprisingly practical. Maybe you don't manifest a new life. Maybe you become the kind of person capable of creating one. The emotion behind the thought. But thoughts alone may not be enough. Imagine saying, I am safe, while your body feels terrified. I am abundant, while your mind is consumed by fear. I am loved, while you deeply believe you are unworthy. The words may be positive, but something deeper is happening beneath them. Emotion gives thoughts meaning. A memory isn't powerful simply because you remember it. Some memories affect you because your body still reacts to them. Your breathing changes. Your heart changes. Your muscles tense. Your mood shifts. This is why the Arcturian message places so much importance on emotion. Don't simply imagine the future. Ask, what would it feel like to live there? Peace, gratitude, love, curiosity, confidence, not as a performance, but as an experience. And perhaps, through repetition, you begin teaching your mind that this emotional state is not foreign. It is familiar. The power of silence. There is another part of the message that is easy to overlook. Silence, meditation, deep breathing, prayer, stillness. Why would silence matter? Because most people rarely experience it. The moment you wake up, information begins. Messages, notifications, news, videos, opinions. arguments, the past, the future, and somewhere underneath all of it, there's a quieter voice, your own. When you deliberately become still, you may begin noticing something strange. Your thoughts are not always you. You can observe a thought, which means you are not necessarily the thought. You can observe fear. You can observe anger. You can observe doubt. And if you can observe it, perhaps you can choose whether to follow it. That tiny space between thought and reaction may be one of the most important spaces in human consciousness. The dark side of creating your reality. But now, we need to enter the darker side of this idea. Because if your subconscious shapes your reality, what happens when the seeds inside it are negative? Fear, shame, rejection, failure, abandonment, anger, years of being told, you're not good enough. You will never succeed. You cannot trust anyone. You are destined to fail. Eventually, these messages can become familiar, and familiarity is powerful. The mind can begin treating the familiar as safe, even when the familiar is painful. This creates a strange paradox. You may consciously want a different life, while subconsciously repeating the patterns that keep you in the old one. You want love, but fear intimacy. You want success, but fear failure. You want freedom, but fear uncertainty. You want change, but your subconscious keeps choosing what it already knows. And perhaps this is the real prison, not a physical prison, not another planet, not another dimension, but a pattern you keep repeating because it feels familiar. The prison inside the mind. This is where the story becomes almost indistinguishable from ancient spiritual philosophy. Many traditions have described humanity as being trapped by ignorance, by illusion, by attachment, by unconscious behavior. Modern spiritual movements sometimes describe the same concept differently. They speak about energy, vibrations, entities, dimensions, the matrix, archons, reincarnation traps, or even extraterrestrial control. But perhaps there is another interpretation. Maybe the prison doesn't need an external entity. Maybe the prison is the automatic pattern itself. You wake up, repeat yesterday, repeat the same thought, repeat the same reaction, repeat the same behavior, and then wonder why tomorrow looks like yesterday. Perhaps awakening isn't escaping the planet. Perhaps awakening is realizing, I have been repeating the same program. The 5D question. So what exactly is a mysterious 5D in spiritual communities? The fifth dimension is often described as a higher state of consciousness, a reality associated with love, unity, peace, intuition, and expanded awareness. But scientifically, there is no evidence that humans are physically moving into a supernatural fifth dimension through meditation or positive thinking. Physics uses dimensions in a very different way. So perhaps 5D should be treated carefully. For some people, it is a literal spiritual reality. For others, it is a metaphor for becoming less reactive, more conscious, more compassionate, and less controlled by fear. And perhaps that is why the concept continues to attract people, because everyone understands a feeling of wanting to become something more. Can you really create your reality? Now we have reached the question at the center of everything. Can you actually create your reality? The answer depends on what we mean by create. Can you think about money and magically make money appear? There is no scientific evidence for that. Can you think yourself out of every illness? No. Can you control another person's choices? No. Can you guarantee that life will give you exactly what you imagine? No. Reality contains things outside your control. Chance exists. Other people exist. Biology exists. Environment exists. And sometimes, terrible things happen to people who did nothing to deserve them. So the idea that every event is something you manifested can become deeply harmful. But there is another meaning. You can influence what you pay attention to. You can influence your habits. You can influence your reactions. You can influence your preparation. You can influence your relationships. You can influence the person you become. And those things can influence the life you eventually experience. Perhaps that is the part of manifestation worth keeping. 5 minutes. You don't need to spend hours trying to transform yourself. 5 minutes may be enough to begin. Sit somewhere quiet, close your eyes, slow your breathing, and ask yourself, who am I becoming? Then imagine that person, not the luxury car, not the mansion, not the perfect fantasy. Imagine the person. How do they behave? How do they speak? How do they handle rejection? How do they respond to failure? How do they treat people? How do they treat themselves? Then choose one action that person would take today and do it, because the subconscious doesn't only listen to what you tell it, it watches what you repeatedly do. The unanswered question. And now we return to the Arcturian message. Perhaps the most fascinating part isn't whether the Arcturians are real. We don't have scientific evidence proving that they are. The fascinating part is a question hidden inside their message. What if consciousness is more powerful than we understand? What if your perception of reality is being filtered by patterns you never consciously chose? What if some of the things you call personality are simply old programs? And what if changing your life doesn't begin with changing the world, but with changing the observer? Maybe the Arcturians are extraterrestrials. Maybe they are spiritual symbols. Maybe the entire story is a modern mythology created by people searching for answers. We don't know, but one thing is certain. You spend every moment of your life experiencing reality through one thing, your consciousness. And understanding that consciousness may be one of the greatest mysteries of all. The seed. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself one question. Not, what do I want? But, what am I teaching my mind to become? Because every thought you repeat is a seed. Every emotion you repeatedly feed is a seed. Every action you take is a seed. And eventually, those seeds become patterns. Patterns become identity. Identity influences choices. Choices create actions. And actions create the life you wake up to. Maybe you are not creating the universe. Maybe you are creating something much closer, the person who experiences it. And perhaps that is what the mysterious Arcturian message was trying to tell us all along. Your subconscious is not simply recording your past. It is learning from everything you repeatedly show it. So be careful what you teach it, because tomorrow it may become the reality you recognize. We first listen to the story. Then we look behind it to discover what might actually be true. This is the crystal mind,